is member to member, the relationship between people. So when we look at the history, we wanted to gnaw our arms off. We were so tired of it. Take it over and over. They would call it different names just so you could take the same history and over. And they never told the truth. They still not telling the truth. They just did a movie on it and didn't tell the truth. All the scholars and historians weighed in on it and said, no, it's not true. But you'll never hear that story, right? Just like you won't hear the true story of Thomas Jefferson or any of them. You see, because if you have the power to select history, then you create the kind of history you want people to see and have. And shame on us if we think the systems of education that are in place are going to educate us about our history. The mayor was so correct. You want them to know, we got to tell them that's why I wrote the book. But what becomes important about American history is an inherent contradiction. And the contradiction is the notion of freedom and democracy. And at the exact same time that we are teaching the concept of freedom and democracy, we are committing genocide against the native population here, and we are enslaving people of African descent. That is a contradiction to send us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. They're just a little off there. So what does that mean? How does one, on the one hand, testify, stand up, pontificate about freedom and democracy, and then engage in behaviors that are the antithesis of that? How do you then engage in what is nothing less than barbaric behavior towards people? How do you oppress and subjugate an entire group of people for centuries? And then talk about this notion of freedom and democracy. How does one do it? Because what it produces inherently is a discomfort internally because you are holding contradictory ideas simultaneously. It's called cognitive dissonance. So the first form of this was the very Constitution itself. And what we have to understand is that everything that followed this lie, that kept it in place, if you ever told a lie and then tried to hold on to it, tried to keep, you know you got to keep up with the lie. You got to keep up with the support of the lie and the people that you told that knew it was a lie, but you didn't want them to expose it, and then you're worried that they're going to get Alzheimer's and tell everybody. It's hard to keep a lie going, right? So every major institution in America was complicit, had to join in to support the fundamental contradiction, which produced tremendous dissonance. And they had to somehow make all of what they're doing seem normal and, sensible and rational, and, it just had to be justified. So in order for you to maintain, you have to justify your behavior. If you've, again, told that lie, you have to somehow justify it, start convincing yourself, well, maybe it isn't a lie. And then what you have to do is you have to come up with proofs. And that becomes the evidence, the justification for why you're doing what you're doing. So then you have to make everything, relabel everything to fit whatever it is you're saying, right? Because this is all to maintain the lie. So these are the institutions that I investigated. I'm not suggesting it's exhaustive, because it isn't. We're talking about science, politics, religion, education, medicine, media, and law. That's all I had time to look at. But all of them you will see. So I'll start. Actually, a literal mouse. Scared the mouse to. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through, and some slides I will skip. Actually, this presentation is going to include my parts of my second book as well, which I'm trying to stay at home long enough to finish writing it. But it's pretty much close to finished. But there'll be parts of that, but a lot of it's in the book, in the actual original book. So if we look through, and once again, thanks to Floyd, if you look carefully at this photo, because I took this picture, you'll see Floyd in the background like a little ghost bouncing off. Floyd is actually in the picture, because he walked me around so I could take these pictures. He gave me a little pass. I'm down in the basement. Let me tell you, particularly young people, I want you to look at, how many people have been to the Statue of Liberty? Okay. See, I didn't go for years because I knew it was going to make me mad. There wasn't no point in my going because I already knew I'd been to France and I'd seen this particular drawing. Now this drawing, I can almost guarantee you did not see. I searched for it because I knew it had to be there. And this is one of the earlier renderings of the Statue of Liberty. And you'll notice that in her left hand, she is holding broken chains. Right? Well, the fact that Floyd this is in the basement. Let me just tell you what it is. This is like you go in the Statue of Liberty, then you go downstairs, and then they got all the little figurines. This is behind a big case of little statues, which is in glass. On the other side, it's encased in glass in a hallway facing a wall. That's why you can see it, because they don't want you to see it. They could not put it there because it's such a real part of history. So the question then becomes, what are those broken chains about? Now, this was commissioned by Bartholdi, who was the artist, the sculptor. In 1865, that's when they decided this would be a good idea to do. Well, important here, yes? Right, and so they said, in honor of that, and to forge this relationship of France with the United States, understanding the struggles that we are sharing, we want those chains to represent the break with slavery, with war, with death. And when he sent this rendering, Bartholdi sent it, they said no. So, Floyd insists that I go everywhere, because, he knows I have a bad attitude. He was new at the job. I didn't want to get him fired or, news at 11. So, I'm floating around Ellis Island, and I go on the tour. Now, those of you that have gone, you know that there are thousands. Every 15, 20 minutes, a ferry comes and drops off folks, picks up folks. Thousands per day, people coming back and forth. And you got the people with the cameras, you got the folks speaking different language, you got the school children holding hands, you got everybody. Everybody's showing. So I came in my little group, and then there's a ranger that comes and he walks you through. So the ranger in my group says, and if there are any questions. Yes, I said, I want to know about the chains. So everybody in my group goes, chains? What you talking about, chains? So this particular, and I have to give him his props. He says, I am going to share with you about the chains. It'll be a little later. So we go through the whole, and the whole tour, you got parts of the Statue of Liberty, the torches over, they got her head over there. They show you how thick it is and what it's made of and why it's copper turned green. Oh, I got over here. They tell you way more than you want to know. So I'm waiting patiently. So we get to this little park area, and there are bronze statues of Bartholdi, the Eiffel guy, the philanthropist, the little bronze statues. He goes, now I'm going to speak to that question you have. He said, when Bartholdi first sent over the renderings, he included chains to show the end with the slavery and the end of the Civil War. He said, and the United States protested and said, we do not want the chains. And Bartholdi said, oh yeah, you're going to have a change. So he said, he was like, insisted that they have to change. And the United States insisted that they not be there. Because any number of reasons. What it represented, reminding the South that they had lost, whatever. We want the Statue of Liberty to represent a broader, all of this stuff. Bartholdi said, the change got to stay. But who won the argument? Bartholdi won the argument, but you didn't know he won because you could never see the chains. The chains are actually at her feet, where you cannot see them under any circumstances. Unless, of course, you're in a helicopter with a zoom lens. That is the only way you can see these chains. And what's interesting about it is, so someone, sometimes I was so upset about it that, I was in the ranger station. Now I'm talking to senior rangers. Two of them, one a woman, one a man, both of them black. Man had been there 25 years, the woman had been there at least 14. And I'm talking to them about the chains. And I'm explaining to them, well, first of all, Dr. Joy, why are the chains important? I'll tell you why they're important. Because when you get off the little ferry, you have little children, little Timmy and Cindy. And they're saying, my great-great, guess what? My great-great came through Ella. My great-great was on. That's what they're saying. And little black children, you see, are looking on curiously because they see no connection with Lady Liberty.
Wow.
But how much taller would they stand if they knew she was standing on the chains that their ancestors didn't come through Ellis Island on, but in the belly of ships? How much prouder would they be if they knew that she was standing on the broken chains of their ancestors, the people upon whose shoulders they stand? How could they not stand tall? And they deserve that. So, in the middle of this conversation, the brother who'd been there 25 years, he finally broke his little, because there's a whole little rope thing that they tell you. He stopped and he said, you know what? It's like the Tuskegee Airmen. He said, this is no different here. And then we started a conversation about how that can change. But in the middle of our conversation, a seasonal worker, young white girl, 20-something, stood in front of him, walked up and stood in front of this man, 25 years he'd been there, and said, oh, we don't need to show the chains. That's unnecessary. There's all this, however many 100 feet of her is enough freedom and democracy for everyone. There's no need for the chains. Now, I need you to understand, this is when we almost had news at 11. The first thing I did was I recommended some reading materials for her. I said, and once you have properly become educated, you can engage in an intelligent conversation with me. But right now, you just need to back up. But the insult wasn't to me, but to these two senior rangers. Are you following? She's a seasonal worker, but it didn't stop her from stepping right in front of them because you see, it was creating cognitive dissonance for her. And she didn't know what to do with that except do what has always been done, which is basically step in front and tell folks how they're going to think. That wasn't going to roll that way. So this becomes really important. I share this wherever I go, right? Now here's what's ironic. I'm going to have to check with Floyd on it because I might have to come back. Floyd arranged for me to train all the rangers who didn't know the chains were wrong. So I ended up going back and training. And in addition to that, whoever the head guy said he promised that he would make this right. I said, because I know I can find some brothers, artists, sisters, and they'll sculpt this little piece right here. If you need it, I'll take a picture myself if you get me up there, and all you got to do is put it on the tour and explain what they are, because that's why it's not there, because then you'd have to explain what they are. It's all around it, largely to suppress the other European invaders, not for the Africans, who were very gentle people, by the way. But what's interesting is when you walk in, to your right and to your left are male and female slave dungeons. This is the male slave dungeon. But they would rape the women and girls within 50 feet of the men. Within 50 feet of the men. To remind them that he cannot protect you. To emasculate him and to give her a feeling of absolute helplessness. This is what the dungeon looks like with the light on. So right here is a trench. There's no running water. There's nothing there. So no water, no toilet facilities. Everything slides down to this little trench. And the floor is on a slant. And the first thing that hits you is the smell when you're in there. It's damp. How many people have been to Cape Coast? It's slippery, it's dank, it's wet, it's a disgusting place. This is what it looked like when they turned the lights out. So this is the only source. Hundreds of people are packed together. Only source of light and ventilation are those three little holes up there. Hundreds of people, no running water, just imagine. This is a death cell for men. These were the men that fought back. They were put in here, because you know brothers, there were brothers who said, you're going to have to take me out. And they were put in there, they wouldn't give them any water or any food. And the only source of ventilation are those little holes in the door. This square here is for the white soldiers and had nothing to do with that particular cell. In almost total darkness, they carved these symbols, which are African symbols, calling out to the ancestors to deliver them. They did this in almost total darkness while they were thirsting and suffocating. Again, this is where white soldiers were held for no more than 24 hours. This is where I had a bit of a meltdown. These are stairs leading to the governor's house, his apartment, and specifically to his bedroom that he had commissioned to be built directly into the black female slave dungeon, so he could have access. Now, mind you, his wife and children also lived up there with him. This is a steel ball that they would chain women to who resisted being raped. She would be naked, they would stop giving her food and water, and they would chain her in the middle of the courtyard as a reminder to any other woman that would fight back. This is an actual death cell, which is like a pit that they put women in. Those women that fought back. This particular photo, and I want you to look closely, you'll see what looks like a watermark. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, actually is the reason why these particular castles are tourable. So they were excavating and cleaning them up to make people have access to being able to tour them. And the workers who were trying to level the floor, they couldn't understand why they couldn't level it. And they realized that they were breaking through not ground, but 2 feet of solidified human waste. Which means that our ancestors wallowed in waste. Not only did they have to wallow in their waste, they never removed it. Ever. Now I want you to put this in a context of a people who deem themselves superior, intelligent, moral, civilized, and said greater, the sun doesn't even set on the British Empire. That's how great we are. An inherent contradiction. And in the middle of it stands the church. I'll get back to that. But what becomes important about American history is an inherent contradiction. And the contradiction is the notion of freedom and democracy.